When people think about the fall of Rome, the same scenes almost always appear in their minds. Barbarians at the gates, scattered legions, emperors quietly removed inside marble palaces. It is a vivid, dramatic picture, and yet it rarely captures the real story. Empires almost never collapse that way. The true breakdown does not come from the outside, it starts from within. And throughout history, one of the most effective and least visible tools of that internal decay has been money. Rome did not fall only because of invasions or moral corruption. It fell because its currency collapsed. And this is a story every modern economy that thinks it can manipulate money still knows all too well. To understand this, we need to start from a solid foundation. For centuries, the Roman economy rested on a single pillar, the silver denarius. First minted around 201 BC, it was nearly pure silver and trusted across the empire. Soldiers were paid with it, merchants preferred it, ordinary people saved with it. The denarius was more than a coin, it was trust, made tangible. Rome was powerful because its money was reliable. As long as people believed in the empire, they believed in its currency as well. But empires are expensive to run. Armies need feeding. Roads must be built, aqueducts maintained, wars constantly financed. By the 2nd century, Rome had reached its natural limits. Germanic tribes pressed in from the west, the Parthians from the east. Inside the empire, tensions were rising. Tax revenues could no longer support the growing burden. Raising taxes further risked open unrest. So the emperors chose a different path, one that was quieter and far less visible. They began to debase the currency. Little by little, the silver content of the denarius was reduced. The numbers leave no room for doubt. Under Augustus, the denarius contained about 95% silver. By the early 3rd century, under Caracalla, that figure had fallen to roughly 50%. By the middle of the century, during the reign of Gallienus, it dropped below 5%. What had once been almost pure silver was now little more than a bronze coin with a thin silver coating. People noticed. They could see it, feel it, weigh it in their hands. What came next was inevitable. Inflation surged because money no longer represented real value. Wheat that once cost a single denarius soon required dozens. This was not an academic debate. It was daily life. Soldiers demanded higher pay just to survive. Merchants refused the debased currency and turned to gold or barter instead. As trust disappeared, local economies slipped back into direct exchange. The emperors responded by minting even more coins, each one worth less than the last. They believed quantity could replace value. Instead, they only sped up the collapse. This pattern has repeated itself again and again throughout history. The situation reached its breaking point during what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Between AD 235 and 284, Rome struggled to breathe for nearly 50 years. Invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic breakdown all struck at once. Emperors were overthrown within months, many of them murdered. Beneath this political chaos lay a financial system that had already failed. Taxes were collected in money that lost value every day. Farmers abandoned their land, trade networks unraveled. The state turned to price controls and forced labor out of desperation. None of it worked. Diocletian made one last attempt to stop the decline. In AD 301 he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, fixing the cost of thousands of goods and services, from grain to wages. Violators faced death. The result was disastrous. Price controls cannot function when the currency itself is worthless. Black markets flourished. Official trade nearly collapsed. People learned a hard but simple lesson. Broken money cannot be repaired by law. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius altogether. Around AD 312, Constantine introduced the solidus, a coin of nearly pure gold. It brought centuries of stability to the Eastern Roman Empire. For the Western Empire, however, it came too late. The currency had already been hollowed out, the economy weakened, and the army unsustainable. Rome did not fall in a single moment. It slowly unraveled. And the monetary crisis was one of the deepest fractures running through that process. The message for today is clear. When money collapses, states collapse with it. Rome believed it could fool its people with coins that looked the same but were worth less. Modern governments believe they can do the same by printing money, manipulating interest rates, or quietly eroding debt through inflation. The outcome is always the same. The public pays the price. Wealth fades away. Trust disappears. Rome learned this lesson the hard way. If we ignore it, we will relearn it ourselves. Every major inflation since Rome has followed the same pattern. Governments debase money to cover costs. Elites shield themselves with real assets. ordinary people become poorer. Rome was simply the first large-scale example. By the 20th century, the pattern was unmistakable. After the First World War, Germany was crushed under the weight of the Treaty of Versailles. Its response was to print money. By 1923, a loaf of bread cost hundreds of billions of marks. Wages were carried in wheelbarrows. Lifelong savings vanished. Debtors benefited, while owners of real assets emerged stronger. Money lost its meaning, and the social damage opened the door to extreme politics. Zimbabwe followed the same path decades later. In 2008, prices doubled almost daily. Eventually, the country was forced to abandon its own currency. The script did not change. And these are not isolated cases. The same forces are at work in developed economies as well. In 1971, the US dollar was severed from the gold standard. Money became entirely dependent on trust. Debt expanded. The money supply ballooned. Purchasing power quietly eroded. The banknotes looked the same, but their substance slowly drained away. The method never changes. Inflation is framed as growth. Debt is sold as investment. Rising stock markets create the illusion of widespread wealth. Meanwhile, real value is quietly extracted from the public. What is different today is scale. The system is global. The next crisis will not belong to a single country. And, as always, those who live on wages, pensions and savings will bear the heaviest cost. The lesson is simple, but uncomfortable. Inflation is not an accident. It is a choice. Real wealth does not exist on paper. It exists in things that hold their value over time. And no system remains stable forever. Rome reminds us of this truth. Systems fail slowly, then all at once. When trust disappears, money follows. The barbarians at the gate deliver only the final blow. The real collapse begins much earlier, deep inside the treasury.